warm welcome to my second Kriegsspiel battle report. Today we will be covering Game 5 of the print and play series hosted by Empire Le Fondio's Chatillon or Sceaux 1870. This game was played on the 22nd of October 2025. Before we begin, a few words on scale and Kriegsspiel perhaps. Today's game was played at the core level, though in the print and play game series we usually play divisional level games. Kriegsspiel, or KS for short, can be used to portray a variety of levels of command ranging from platoon actions over battalion to regiment or even army group size. In some larger games, such as the Battle of Gela, which was hosted a few months ago, players may staff an entire division all the way down to the individual platoon leader, all the way up to the divisional commander. I would now like to introduce the teams and the players. On the blue team, or the French team, we have Soldier Steve and Gareth. On the red team, or the German team, for today we have Sean Lambert and myself. And in the umpires we have Umpire Le Fondios and our spectator Rebel Squirrel. The red team briefing. We did not at this point know that this was in fact the Battle of Chatillon. What we knew, however, was that the enemy capital lies east, behind the redoubt of Oldbrook, and is at this point largely surrounded by our forces, yet the enemy appears to be attempting a breakout. Our task was the following: secure the town of Weizen to complete the encirclement of the blue capital, and repulse any attempt to prevent the envelopment of the capital. A decisive victory would be reached if we could also seize the redoubt of Oldbrook. For this task we have been given 2 corps and some corps assets. The first corps, or historically the Bavarian 2nd Corps, contains the 53rd Infantry Division and the 57th Infantry Division, commanded by me. The 2nd Corps, or historically the Prussian 5th Corps, contains the 64th Infantry Division and the 67th Infantry Division, commanded by Sean Lambert. The corps assets we have available are 1 brigade of cavalry and 2 artillery batteries. Red plan. On the picture you can see the original deployment of our forces, with the 57th, 53rd artillery and cavalry being deployed in a marching column on the road between Lauten and Weizen. However, we have opted to slightly redeploy some forces, with the cavalry being attached to the 53rd Division, which will, instead of heading north, be making its way to Neuenhafen to threaten Oldbrook and the flank of any attempt at a blue breakout. The 57th will remain on its historical course, moving north to Kleindorf, rushing as fast as they can to secure the artillery position there. The 67th will also head for Kleindorf, with the 64th heading north to take up the blocking position initially held by the cavalry. I will now take you to the game from my perspective as a player in this game. Turn 1, 0900 hours. It is to my surprise that the 57th Division is actually staged further south at Bergenthal than anticipated. This potentially leaves the artillery in Kleindorf vulnerable. However, we might yet still have time to move the 57th up to secure them. The 53rd starts on the road east of Lauten and is positioned to move to Neuenhafen and threaten the flank as planned. Turn 2, 10 AM. The 57th Division has made its way almost to Kleindorf and will soon be out of communication with myself, falling instead under the command of Sean Lambert. The 53rd and the cavalry have reached the river, however they have there encountered a force of blue cavalry. It is now a few turns later. We are now at turn 5 or 1300 hours. I have dispatched cavalry to block the northern crossing at Neuenhafen, while my infantry remains at the southern crossing. The blue horse, supported by infantry, have retreated back to Neuenhafen, allowing me to pass the river. Another 2 turns later, it is now 1500 hours. My infantry and cavalry have pursued the enemy force, which is roughly of our own size, to the east of Neuenhafen, yet there the blue forces have taken up a strong defensive position and have repulsed my skirmishers. At this point, both me and Sean are in fact worried that we have yet to properly establish where the enemy has their main effort. I have encountered a element that is about my own size, so 1 division and some cavalry, and Sean reports having encountered some infantry and artillery at Kleindorf, though we do not yet know where the enemy main effort is. It is relatively late in the day already, and the battle is nearing its conclusion. Turn 10, 1800 hours. Not much has changed from the last screenshot. I still hold the high ground east of Neuenhafen, and the blue forces are still in their strong defensive position. I had for some time infiltrated some cavalry north of the blue forces to cut their line of retreat back to Oldbrook. However, they were repulsed by the blue cavalry in return. Though this battle was rather uneventful from my point of view, being only involved in limited skirmishing and fighting, it does illustrate one of the main draws towards Kriegsspiel, for you do not have perfect knowledge. I do not know what is happening in the center or the north, and it is an exciting prospect to receive a dispatch from my fellow player informing me of his progress. Now we will dive into the bigger picture, or the umpire's perspective on the battle. The bigger picture, deployment. As you can see, though it was not reflected in my initial screenshot, the 57th Division is actually a ways north of Bergenthal, being deployed together with one of Sceaux's divisions, while the other has taken up its blocking position in the north towards Weisen. In the southeast or bottom right of the screenshot, you can also see that the blue forces have deployed a division of infantry and a division of cavalry, poised to potentially harass a believed column that is between Lauden, Bergenthal and Kleindorf. In the center you can see another division of blue forces supported by 2 batteries of artillery and a second division in reserve just south of Oldbrook. Turn 2, 10 AM. The red forces are coalescing around Kleindorf, having spotted blue movement in the forest to their east the turn before. The blue forces are moving along the road on Kleindorf, though you can see that the blue forces are in fact outnumbered by an entire division. You can also see that in the middle, or the rough south of the battle, one brigade of blue cavalry has in fact managed to slip from Neuenhafen towards Bergenthal, potentially being able to get into the rear of our forces. Turn 3, 11 AM. Blue cavalry from Neuenhafen has reached Bergenthal and has found it empty, while the red forces have coalesced around Kleindorf successfully, with the blue forces beginning to form up on the edge of the forest. The commander in the center of the blue forces, Gareth, now being faced with a difficult position. He is outnumbered by about 1 division and is facing an enemy in advantageous defensive ground. In the south you can see mirroring positions, infantry facing infantry and cavalry facing cavalry. Neither side is poised to make much of an advance in any turn soon. Turn 4, 1200 hours. As you can see, Sean Lambert has now dispatched a division's worth of infantry to the north, having feared that the centre was in fact not a main effort but some kind of distraction, and that the French or blue forces might potentially already have broken through the northern forested route. However, as we can see, the main blue effort is in fact bottled up in the forest, though neither Sean nor myself have the visual range to note this. You can also see that the blue cavalry that was in Bergenthal has joined their main effort on the road between Oldbrook and Kleindorf, being unable to achieve much at Kleindorf on its own. You can also see in the south that the blue infantry has vacated the river crossing, allowing me to cross the river at 1200 hours. Turn 7, 1500 hours. Being faced with an extremely disadvantageous position in the center, Gareth has elected to at least send one of his divisions to Weisen, as part of the blue briefing was to not let Weisen fall into red hands. You can also see that Sean has reinforced the division in the north with an additional brigade. The forces in the centre now being roughly equal, with red forces holding a singular brigade advantage. You can also see me and Steve jostling for positions in the south at Neuenhafen. Turn 8, 1600 hours. The northern red detachment has begun infiltrating the forest, moving carefully to avoid being ambushed in the forest, as at this point neither Sean nor I are completely clear on where the blue main effort is, having only spotted limited blue movement in the south and the middle. You can also see that about a division of infantry from the blues is about halfway up the road between Oldbrook and Weisen, using the railroad embankment as an impromptu marching route. Turn 10, 1800 hours. The northern red detachment has almost reached the town of Weisen, though the blue cavalry and infantry are in position to reach it before them. In the centre there is a standoff between the reinforced red division and the blue division, both supported by artillery, whereas in the very south you can see very limited movement, largely contained to some cavalry action that was largely inconsequential for both sides. On the right side of your screen you can see a picture graciously provided by Sean demonstrating the situation he believes to be at 1800 hours, with the centre being a standoff between roughly equal forces, though he believes the blue to have an advantage in cannon. You can also see that he has accurately scouted the position of the blue cavalry and infantry, planning a attack on Weisen for the following turn. Turn 11, 1900 hours. The game is called after a successful attack by the veteran Red Infantry, which drives the Blue Infantry and Cavalry from Weizen, completing our objective and effectively bottling up the Blue breakout attempt from Altbruck. In the center or the south, little has changed. My thoughts and conclusions. The scenario was very difficult for the French, and I am not entirely sure that there was a viable way to victory for the French due to how we had deployed our forces being extremely concentrated. It was mentioned in the debrief that the way to win this for the French was to be, quote, where the Germans weren't and concentrate there. However, with how concentrated we were, it would be difficult for them to amass enough forces to effectively attack us. And also the French simply got very unlucky, with their southern harassing force running straight into our southern flanking force. This game also demonstrates that in Kriegsspiel sometimes you do not need to break the enemy army. It can be enough to simply maneuver into a position where they will be unable to break you, yielding a victory for your side, or forcing them to retreat. The game was rather light on combat, with few casualties suffered by both sides, meaning that the French will actually remain in much better shape than they were historically. A few words on the historical battle. This battle was fought on the 19th of September 1870, just south of Paris, with the freshly formed French 14th Corps attempting to disrupt the final stages of the encirclement of Paris. If you're interested in a more complete description of the historical battle, feel free to check out the after action report document linked in the description below. If you are interested in perhaps playing one of these games yourself, check out the Print and Play Game Discord server in the description of the video. Also check out today's host, Umpire Lafondio's, on his YouTube channel. Please like, subscribe, have a great day and happy wargaming.